Hello and welcome to this first video series on Controls 101. What are controls? My name's Jeff Hunter. I am the training director at Controlco. I've been here for 30 years working in controls. Started off knowing nothing, working on the bench, learned lots of stuff over the years, hands-on. We used to take things and figure out how they worked. I've smoked a lot of relays and controllers and motors and all that stuff, learning the basics of how controls operate. So when I started to look at designing this course for the beginner, someone who's never been exposed, maybe you're a HVAC mechanic or you're a student and you're deciding that, hey, maybe this is right for me, I tried to look on YouTube and Google and find out, hey, what is control? If I was brand new to this, how do I start? I couldn't really find anything that takes you from scratch and just kind of introduce you to the concept of control and cover the important things and leave out all the technical stuff, all of the jargon that's used when we're looking at control systems and controls and what's important and what's not. It starts to get really technical really quick. And it's hard to find a good definition. A lot of the stuff out there are sales pitches, we're going to teach you this so you can buy our products. That's not what this course is about. This course is going to be about how to get started on the path and understand really what we need and what we need to know about certain things in order to make control systems work. If you've been exposed to controls at this point in your career, and you're dealing with someone who already knows what they're doing, they conveniently might leave out some of the basics that you need to know, like what's an input? What does this do? What does that do? Why is this important? Why is that important? And so we'll cover those. We'll start off really basic, but just remember that the most important part of our control system is going to be our sensor, because that's what we're using to measure the data coming in. So what is control? So when we talk about control, we have control logic, which would be your typical line ladder drawing, relays, switches. You turn on a switch, it turns on a relay. We'll talk a little bit about that, but we're going to get into control loops. And control loops allow us to control something while we're not there. So there's two different kinds of loops in general. We have open loops and closed loops. When we talk about open loops, it's not really what you would consider to be an automatic control system. For example, I walk into a dark room. I can't see. So I go and I flip the light switch on. The light bulb comes on and now I can see the room. Now, I affected the outcome by turning on the light switch. So I was able to determine that when I walked into the room, it was dark. So I needed to do something to affect the lighting in the room. So I turned on the light switch, the light bulb came on, and the room got brighter. When I leave the room, if I don't turn off the switch, the light stays on. So there's nothing there that's automatic. So basically the light switch controls the light bulb, but that's a manual type control. We refer to those as open loops. There's nothing there to turn the light bulb off when I leave the room if all I have is a light switch. So if I wanted to automate the process of the lighting in that room, the most basic way that I could do that to turn that light bulb on when I walk into a room is to put a motion detector on the wall. So as I walk in, it senses that there's movement in the room, so it automatically turns the light off for me. When I leave the room and that motion detector doesn't detect movement in the room, it turns off the light switch. That's an example of a closed loop. Very basic, simple closed loop lighting control system. Now you can get a lot more fancy and complicated with that. You could have the motion detector and you could also have a light level sensor. and adjust the light level in the room based on occupancy and levels outside to get the optimal lighting conditions for the room. But that's all a closed loop system. So in the open loop system, I was the one turning on everything. So when we're dealing with loops and we're dealing with controls, we need three things. We need a sensor, we need a controller, and we need something to control. So in the dark room, my eyeballs are the sensor. My hands and my brain are the controller. When I turn the light switch on, it turns on and off the light. So I'm controlling the light bulb. Those three things have specific names when we're dealing with controls and loops. So my eyeballs are my sensor. You'll hear that referred to as process variable, controlled variable, measured variable. Basically, all that is the sensor. Whatever you want to sense, detect, control, that's what your sensor is. Then it fed into my brain, which is my controller. So my brain determined, based on an internal set point in my head, that the room was too dark. It determined that it needed to turn on the light switch. So it used my hand to flip the light switch and then turn on the light bulb. That light bulb is what we consider to be the final control element or the controlled device. The reason I'm using the technical terms is that if you go looking for information on this, that's what all the technical documentation is going to call these things. So we've got a sensor or a process variable, controlled variable, measured variable. We have the controller, something in the middle, which has a set point. And then we have our final control device or our final control element, our output, whatever we're controlling. That's a basic control system, something that we do every day. Don't even think about it in those terms. In a closed loop, we still have the final control device or the final control element, the light bulb, but we go about controlling it a little bit differently. So go back to our example of the motion detector in the room. I walk in, motion detector senses occupancy, senses motion, turns on the light bulb for me. That's the closed loop approach. So when we're dealing with our control systems in energy, HVAC, industrial process control, we're trying to eliminate the open loop type controls. They're not very energy efficient. It requires someone in the middle to do all the calculations. So we won't spend any more time talking about open loops because that's not really what we want to accomplish. What we want to do is automate the process and have these systems operate automatically so that we can save as much energy as we can. That's the whole goal with controls, is to save energy. If I have my dark room and I flip the light switch on and I leave it on and I leave the house and I go on an overseas trip for 6 months and I left my light bulb on, it's using energy that doesn't need to be used. So when we're automating these processes, we're trying to identify areas where we can control them when someone isn't there to do the job. So there are three things that we need, physical things that we need to do closed loop control. We need a sensor, we need a controller, and we need a final control element, something that we control. The course will focus on those three components. We'll start off with sensors, because in any control system, the most important part is the sensor. I can try and control temperature in a room all day long, but if my sensor is telling me it's 70 degrees and it's really 85 in there, I'm not really going to get control out of that room. I can have the most expensive controller on earth, and I can have the greatest final control element out there. But if my sensor is feeding me bad information, I can't do anything but control to the bad information. So we'll spend a lot of time on sensors in general, what they are, what they do, and why looking at different types of sensors and understanding the kind of the technology is important. I'm not going to go into deep dives on this stuff. This course is designed for somebody who doesn't want to get real technical, but they want to kind of jumpstart and get into this and kind of have a basic understanding of, what's really important. What do I really need to understand? So anyway, I will see you in the next video where we're going to talk about sensors and sensor types.